Welcome to Small Spark Theory. This podcast is designed as a collection of thoughts, ideas, and practical tips on using marginal gains to help your agency new business endeavours. Small Spark Theory is hosted and created by Lucy Mann, founder of Gunpowder Consulting.
Welcome back to Small Spark Theory. We're delighted to be in a new venue this month, rather than what we like to call Studio Narnia, which is my living room, surrounded by a clothes rail and lots of cardboard and foam.
Don't give away the secret.
We're in a marvellous pod at White City Place, which is a wonderful thing.
It's pink.
It's pink.
It's outside.
It's outside and it's a stone's throw from Westfield, so if everything goes well this afternoon,
We're going shopping.
There will be shopping. So in this episode, we're going to be having a look at agency websites and how we can improve them to support our new business and marketing. So I'm here today with my able assistant, Izzy.
Hello.
This has never been more evident to me than last November when I was invited to join a new business seminar held by the Design Business Association. I asked them how many of them felt their agency website truly reflected their offer. And out of the 60 people there, only 5 people put their hands up. The good news is that if, from my sample of 60, if 55 of those people are unhappy with their website, then that means actually there's a huge opportunity to just make things a bit better, which is lovely because that's the kind of marginal gains thing.
Brilliant news.
That we love. What we're going to do today is we're just going to focus on a few things that might help those 55 and any of the other listeners who are struggling a bit to make their website better and they're not quite sure where to start. We're just going to pick off a few of the common problems and work out what they can do that's a little bit better.
How much of a problem is it, though?
Well, you could say, is it just a bit navel gazing to be worrying about how good the website is? But Jonathan Kirk at Up to the Light produced his What Clients Think report, which is an annual survey.
It was in March this year, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a few months ago. And one of the stats in there was that 68% of clients believe that most agency websites fail to communicate the agency's difference. So really, in a client's eyes, there's just a load of largely undifferentiated generalist agencies out there.
How can they tell the difference?
Exactly, and we owe it to ourselves to try and make clients' life a bit easier. If we want to sell to them, we want them to buy from us, then let's try and make it easier for them to do that. The other statistic in that report was that 90% of clients want a website to quickly show them what the agency is best at. So the agency positioning is important, but clients also need to really quickly be able to cut through to understand what the agency's core competencies are. What do you really do? What are you best at? And that doesn't necessarily mean a shopping list of services, which can be a bit workmanlike, but it's really about being able to say, this is what we really excel at.
Why do you think this becomes such a problem for agencies?
Well, in the same way that marketing and new business activity is generally a bit suboptimal, for all of those reasons that we've talked about, there's a focus in the agency on billable time, so there's a lack of resource, there's a lack of planning, there's a lack of objectivity, there's a bit of introversion in a lot of cases, a focus on what we do rather than how we help. And in some cases, particularly for traditional design agencies, for example, or brand strategy agencies, there's a lack of digital expertise as well, so that can be a factor. But in a way, the agency website really is the embodiment of all the reasons why marketing and new business is poor.
Yeah.
So all of those things rolled into one, and all of that comes across in the website.
Why don't we talk about some of the common problems that are coming up time and time again?
Yeah, the big one is probably, as we talked about before, is the lack of differentiation. That's the number one. But then behind that, there's certainly how we talk about our services, so what we actually do.
Right.
There's then putting together case studies in a compelling way. There are lots of different ways that you can cut a case study or showcase your work. What's the optimal way to do that? Quite often they fall short. Another area that falls short is the call to action. A simple thing like the contact page. It often gets left as a bit of an afterthought, but actually is the most important part. Yeah. Making it easy for someone to get in touch. Exactly. One other area that often gets overlooked is the people aspect. So often, if you look on an agency website and you go to the About Us part, there aren't any people.
Where are they?
That's a massive missed opportunity. So we're going to talk about that. Navigation often can be better. And then there's general content. What else do you put up there apart from the existing work? Mm-hmm. Design trends and the various trends in technology for sites can get in the way and cause all kinds of headaches. And then there's a consideration around SEO. And then there's a big consistency issue that we need to think about.
Okay. Should we go through these and see how we can tackle these?
Yeah, I think, first of all, the differentiation bit. We know that that's an issue. And in an ideal world, if we think back to the episode that we had with Felix, he talked a lot about differentiation and about how you need to find out the thing that you're really good at, that you do really well, and repeat it.
Obsessively.
Exactly. And that's a great thing. The problem is, for a lot of agencies, coming up with that really clear, laser sharp differentiation takes too long. And in all the time they're trying to find that, the website doesn't get touched because they're searching for that hidden gem, that differentiator that's going to make all the difference. So my advice is controversial. Yes, you should still strive to find that key differentiator. You should still book in the time with the key people, get them in a room, set some timelines, and make sure that you do that. But in the meantime, still fix the other stuff.
And you call it the Ronseal approach?
Yes, so what we can do is, rather than really worry about this differentiator, if it's being too troublesome, go for a Ronseal, does what it says on the tin. So are you a design agency? Are you a brand strategy agency? Are you a digital marketing agency? Have your introduction as what you actually are, not a buzzword. In striving to find differentiation, if we're not careful, we'll become abstract. So have the Ronseal approach, come up with something that says we are a blah agency, and then the differentiator should come in the how. So it's how we do that. Stick with what you actually are, and then worry about the differentiator in the how you do it, which should make it easier. Then we need to think about how we talk about our services. And again, this can be a little bit troublesome, and often we end up focusing on what we actually did rather than what we achieved. If it's packaging, we talk about the font or the illustration style, the type of printing technique we used for a particular piece of collateral, or how we filmed a particular campaign. But actually, what clients are interested in is what was the business problem that we were solving, and what were the results that we managed to achieve. Having that shift that isn't focused so much on the detail of the work, but the detail of the challenge, the business problem. So go back to the brief, exactly. Let's go back and talk about the brief, talk about what it was that the client needed to do. So this could be anything from we were trying to engage a broader stakeholder community, or we were trying to attract a new demographic of consumers, we were trying to grow market share, or perhaps we were raising finance, or perhaps it was investor communication. So go back to the brief and really think about the core challenge that we were trying to solve to the client, and talk about the case study in those terms and how our work supported that activity and the results that we delivered. If your case studies don't have that information, then I would say you need to go back to square one, and as you're starting a project, think about that.
Also thinking about how you can demonstrate effectiveness.
Yes.
Right from the beginning of a project as well.
Yes, and particularly relevant for design agencies, talk to the DBA, because they're absolutely focused on design effectiveness and will give you lots of information on how you can measure your effectiveness throughout the course of your projects. For digital agencies, this should be really, really easy, because nearly everything that happens digitally is measured. You can measure. Whether it's an e-commerce campaign, or whether you're building a new website, or whether you're doing SEO activity or PPC activity, everything can be measured.
There's no excuse.
No, exactly. Use your stats.
Yeah.
Obviously, talk to your clients, get them to share information with you.
Yeah.
Ideally, before you put case studies on your website, talk to your clients first and get them to sign it off. And testimonials as well.
So important.
Really will bring your case studies to life if you can get a client to give you a lovely, short, punchy testimonial. Another area that we tend to fall down on, it can get a little bit forgotten, I think, is the contact page, which actually that's the main call to action. It's really important that we get that page right. And a contact form, I think, will generally put people off. If you've got a senior client that finds their way onto your site, it's unlikely, I think, that they're going to fill in a form.
They don't have time for that.
No,
They want
and
to speak to
I
someone.
think yes, exactly. And you want to catch people at that time of need. So I think the focus is to make that page really welcoming, have a little bit of copy on there that's inviting and it looks as though you're welcoming inquiries, and make sure there's a name of somebody senior who can take that call. On the same theme about people, it's really important to try and talk as much about the people in the agency, because that actually in itself is a key differentiator. There's a lot of talk in the industry, particularly in design, about how design has become commoditized, and when there are sites like Fiverr that come up where you can buy an identity for about $20 or however much it is, that's not a good thing for the design industry. But what differentiates one agency from another is the people and their experience, and particularly where we are here in London, we're surrounded by one of the most creative communities in the world, and there's a lot of people with really rich experience with fantastic clients. So missing the opportunity to talk about that experience and talk about the people is a wasted opportunity. As much as you can, talk about the people. Don't worry if your team is small, and I know there can be a reticence to show your team if you're only a small agency, because you worry that clients will perceive that you're not big enough. But I think probably that clients' perceptions have changed a little bit, and that there's less stigma around small agencies. I think the arrival of digital and so many specialist areas has meant that there are loads of agencies out there that do very different things. They're quite often quite young, they're in co-working spaces, they've got really flexible workforces, and I think clients are getting quite used to that now and have a slightly different approach. So don't worry about size. I think, even if you're a small agency, still talk about the key people in the organisation and showcase their experience. I don't know about you, Izzy, but I've sat in on many website briefing sessions where we have the eternal debate about, do we organise our case studies by discipline, by sector, by company name?
I couldn't possibly comment.
And there are lots
Except I will, and yes.
Yes, there are lots of different ways that you can cut it. But my advice would be just try and keep your navigation as simple as possible. Try not to overcomplicate it, and try and keep the route to all the information no more than a few clicks away. If it gets too complicated, then you'll lose people. And always give your user a really easy way back to the home page or back to the contact page.
Yeah.
Always give them a way out.
Yeah. Give them
You
a
don't
way.
want to get stuck. Apart from showcasing your work, the main use of content really is to help you from a search perspective. Ideally, keep your content fresh. So make sure that you're uploading new case studies and you've got perhaps a blog. If you've got somebody in the business that has point of view, or you've got people that are happy to write, then having a blog is a great way to either talk more about the agency, life at the agency.
What if you don't have anyone who has the time to put aside for that?
Well, I think Usually there's someone in the agency that can do that. And the benefit of a blog, actually, it's not just about your client and prospect audience, it's also a good recruitment tool as well. So it can give a bit of a feeling for the culture of the business. And when you're coming to hire people, then that's a useful insight into the kind of business that you're running. If writing and blogging really isn't your thing, it's far better just to have a really good site that performs in every other way than to produce a couple of blog posts and then leave it for a year and not have anything else. What you might want to do is, if you're a very creative agency, is you'll probably get more enjoyment from having an Instagram feed and using that visual stimulus and then feeding that into your site as well, which is another way of being able to feed new content into the site, but you haven't got to worry about writing. So everybody's different. Some people are really good at tweeting. For other people, Instagram is more relevant. For other people, where they have more of a thought leadership stance, then a blog is a great format for that. But what you're trying to do is to provide a way for Google to see that your site is being refreshed. Google will be looking at your homepage. Now, I'm not an SEO expert, but I know that Google will be reading your homepage and looking for how it's been refreshed. So a quick tip is to make sure that in your homepage design, if you can pull through your blog feed, so recent posts, and pull through your Twitter feed, recent tweets, onto your homepage, or even latest case studies, anything that's going to be updated, then that will help a little with your Google rankings.
Oh, that's good. That's really good. You mentioned earlier about design trends and technology.
There will always be a trend for certain styles of website that will come and go, and people will adopt particular styles, and I think that's inevitable. What I would say is that, if possible, avoid jumping on the bandwagon and avoid adopting a new style or technology just for the sake of it, because that can just get you into all kinds of problems. I mean, there are certain things that you need to think about. Certainly responsive website is important. So many more people will be looking at your website from a mobile device or a tablet, particularly mobiles. So it's best that if you have got a responsive site, that would be great. Ours isn't responsive yet, I should add right now.
Don't draw attention to that.
Well, no, it's being changed at the moment, but if you can make sure that it's going to work across different devices, then that's good. Just try to avoid any of those things that are going to slow the process down. So if you've got a really good team who've got capacity and are really technical and that can deliver a site that's got all the bells and whistles really quickly, then great, go for it. But if you don't have that capability in-house, or you can't easily and quickly access it through partners and collaborators, then just stay clear. Just do something that's simple, that you can implement, that you can easily update, and that's going to work for you for SEO.
There's a really fantastic website to put your site through its paces.
Yes, Website Grader. I think it's produced by HubSpot. You can put your website address in there, and it gives you an amazing dashboard of all the areas that your site could be working harder.
It basically just tests to see how strong your website is in all the different areas.
Before you start, it's worth having a go at Website Grader and see what results you get, and then you can benchmark and take it from there. Lastly, we were just going to talk about consistency, because if you go through and you've worked a bit on your agency description and your differentiator, you've updated, you've tweaked how you talk about yourself and your case studies, it's really important to remember to keep that consistent across all your other channels as well. So you may find that not only have you got to update your LinkedIn page and your Twitter biog and perhaps your Instagram biog and all of those things, but there may be other things that it's easy to forget. So there may be other memberships that you have where you have a profile listing on other websites. So just go through all of those, think about which industry bodies, for example, you may have joined or have subscriptions to that have got a profile for you. So maybe you're on the Drum Network and you've got a profile on there, or you're an IPA member and you have a profile there, or the DBA, or whoever it might be. Just make sure you update your profile with any of the changes that you've made to your company descriptor.
You normally ask your guests to recommend a book or a TED Talk.
Yes.
Do you have anything to recommend?
I do. I'm going to recommend a book, actually. Now, it's not about websites, but it is about selling. And actually, I think probably it would be quite helpful when you're thinking about your website to read this book. It's To Sell is Human by the brilliant Dan Pink. He also wrote Drive, which is another great book. But To Sell is Human is one of the books that I normally recommend when I'm doing my training courses, and it's just a brilliant reminder, particularly for those in creative industries who find the whole concept of sales a bit alien and uncomfortable. It's just a reminder that actually it's just a very human behaviour. And it doesn't matter whether we're asking our kids to eat their vegetables or asking our partner to take out the rubbish, it's all selling. So let's not be afraid of it. And you absolutely can win a copy. As always, join in the conversation on Twitter using the hashtag #SmallSparkTheory, and we will pick a winner and send a copy of Dan's book.
Let's challenge the Small Spark Theory listeners.
Yes. I found a little questionnaire that I put together about 4 years ago that we used at a breakfast event, and it was 20 questions about your website. So we're going to post that on the blog. So if any of the listeners want to have a look and go through that questionnaire, and it will challenge you to be really tough with yourself about your own website.
It's brutal.
Well, it just asks a few questions and it will give you a bit of an idea of how well your website is performing. So between that and the website grader, what more do you need? So if you head to the blog, we've just compiled a few resources of places to go for inspiration and ideas when you're making changes to your website. Next month, July. We've got a bit of a holiday theme here because these are all good things that you can do in the summer downtime. Next month we're going to be talking about events. Many of you may be thinking about adding events to your new business and marketing calendar if you can host your own agency events. It can be a bit scary for some people, that horrible, terrifying thought that you might put on an event and no one's going to turn up. So we're going to be focusing on that next month. Join us then.
You have been listening to Small Spark Theory, a podcast by Gunpowder Consulting. Music is provided by Juke Deck, available via jukedeck.com. Small Spark Theory is hosted by Lucy Mann. The editor is Isabel Jarvis, and the podcast is produced by Rosanna Miles at makemypodcast.space. This episode was recorded at The Pod in White City Place. Visit gunpowderconsulting.com for more information, and visit our blog there to download further podcasts. Join the conversation on Twitter at Gunpowder Tweets #SmallSparkTheory. And if you like what you hear, head to iTunes and give us a star, or 5. Thanks for listening.